Years. I have presided over thousands of cases during my years on the bench, but there are only a handful that still follow me home at night. This was one of them. It began with a young woman who walked into my courtroom wearing a designer outfit that probably cost more than some families earn in a month. Years. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that comes from never hearing the word no. Her name was Olivia Sterling, the daughter of a powerful millionaire CEO. The moment she entered my courtroom, she smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a respectful smile, a smirk. And believe me, after decades as a judge, years, I learned that smirks can tell you more than sworn testimony ever will. The courtroom was already packed that morning. Reporters sat quietly in the back rows. Spectators whispered to one another. Even before proceedings began, everyone seemed to know who Olivia Sterling was. What they didn't know was what would happen next. Years. As I reviewed the case file in front of me, I noticed something unusual. Olivia wasn't acting like a defendant. She was acting like she owned the building. She leaned back in her chair. She ignored her attorney's attempts to speak with her. Years. She occasionally glanced around the courtroom as if she were attending a social event rather than a legal proceeding. In my experience, wealthy defendants often arrive believing money can solve anything. Most learn quickly that a courtroom operates differently. Olivia had not learned that lesson yet. Years. I remember looking toward the plaintiff's table. There sat Daniel Carter, a middle-aged mechanic. His hands were rough from years of labor. His suit didn't fit perfectly. His shoulders were tense. Unlike Olivia, he understood exactly what was at stake. Years on the bench teach you how to read fear. Daniel was afraid. Olivia wasn't. Years. That contrast immediately caught my attention. The allegations seemed straightforward at first. A property dispute, damaged equipment, financial losses. Nothing extraordinary, at least that's what the paperwork suggested, but something felt wrong, very wrong. As attorneys prepared their opening statements, I observed Olivia carefully. Years. She never once looked at Daniel, not once. Innocent people usually glance at the person accusing them. Angry people stare. Concerned people watch every reaction. Olivia ignored him completely. It was as though he didn't exist. That kind of behavior often reveals more than people realize. Years. Then something happened that instantly changed the atmosphere inside the courtroom. Daniel's attorney displayed the first piece of evidence on the courtroom monitor. The screen illuminated, the spectators leaned forward, and for the first time all morning, Olivia stopped smiling. Only for a second, just a second, but I saw it. Years. A flash of concern, a tiny crack in the confidence she had carried into my courtroom. Most people would have missed it. I didn't. That single expression told me the case was about to become far more complicated than anyone expected. I remember thinking, whatever she's hiding, she's worried about that evidence. Years. The attorney hadn't even started explaining it yet, and already Olivia looked different. Then she quickly recovered. The smirk returned, the confidence returned, the arrogance returned, but I had already seen enough, and once a judge notices something like that, it's impossible to ignore. The attorney began speaking, slowly, carefully. Years. Methodically. Each sentence seemed to push Olivia further toward a corner she didn't yet realize existed. Meanwhile, the spectators grew quieter. The courtroom tension became almost tangible. Even the court reporter seemed unusually focused. Then Daniel Carter stood up. His hands were shaking. His voice trembled. Years. And he spoke a single sentence that changed everything. A sentence so unexpected that the entire courtroom froze, including me. For the first time that morning, Olivia Sterling looked genuinely afraid. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a property dispute. It was something much bigger, something darker. Years. Something that would eventually expose secrets nobody in that courtroom was prepared to hear. I will never forget the silence that followed Daniel Carter's statement, not because it was loud, not because it was emotional, but because it was so simple. In my years on the bench, years, I've learned that the most dangerous truths are usually delivered quietly. Daniel stood there, staring directly at me. His hands were trembling. His face was pale, and then he said, "Your Honor, she didn't just destroy my equipment. Pause. She destroyed my life." The courtroom froze. Now, believe me, years. People say things like that in court all the time. Lawsuits create emotion. Financial disputes create anger. Exaggeration is common, but something about Daniel felt different, very different. I watched Olivia carefully. For the first time all morning, she wasn't smirking. Interesting, very interesting. Years. Daniel's attorney slowly approached the evidence screen. Years of experience have taught me that good attorneys reveal information gradually. Great attorneys reveal it psychologically. This attorney knew exactly what he was doing. The screen displayed photographs. A workshop cited machinery, broken tools, damaged vehicles. Years. Thousands of dollars in losses. The spectators immediately began whispering. Olivia rolled her eyes. That reaction caught my attention. Most defendants become nervous when evidence appears. Olivia seemed annoyed, almost bored. I looked down at my notes, then back at her, and that's when I noticed something disturbing. Years. She wasn't worried about being found responsible. She was irritated that she had to sit through the hearing at all. Years on the bench teach you to recognize entitlement. Real entitlement isn't arrogance, it's disbelief. The belief that consequences are meant for other people, not for you. Olivia embodied that mindset perfectly. Years. Then her attorney stood. He was experienced, professional, calm. Unfortunately for him, his client wasn't helping. He began presenting the defense. According to Olivia, the entire situation had been a misunderstanding, an accident, nothing intentional, no malicious conduct. Simple, clean, convenient, almost too convenient. As he spoke, years. I watched Olivia again. People reveal themselves when they think nobody is paying attention. She checked her phone, smirked, whispered something to a friend sitting behind her, then laughed, lawed, while Daniel sat 10 feet away describing financial devastation. Interesting, very interesting. I remember looking toward the jury box. Years. Several jurors noticed it too. That concerned me because juries don't just evaluate facts, they evaluate behavior. And Olivia's behavior was becoming a problem. Then Daniel's attorney introduced another piece of evidence, a security video. The moment he announced it, Olivia's expression changed again. Tiny movement, big meaning. Years. There it was, that same flicker of concern gone within seconds. But I saw it. The attorney pressed play, the courtroom monitor lit up. Everyone watched. The footage showed a private parking area outside Daniel's business. Multiple camera angles, clear image quality, clear timestamps. And then a luxury sports car entered the frame. Years. Bright red, impossible to miss. The spectators immediately recognized it. So did I, because the vehicle belonged to Olivia Sterling. The attorney allowed the footage to continue. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. The courtroom became unnaturally quiet. Then the video showed something unexpected. The sports car stopped. The driver's door opened. Years. And Olivia stepped out. Interesting, because according to her written statement, she had never been there, not once. I looked toward her attorney. His face immediately tightened. Interesting, very interesting. He hadn't expected that. Years on the bench teach you something important. Years. The most dangerous moment in any trial is when an attorney discovers their client lied. I could practically see the realization happening in real time. The attorney looked toward Olivia. Olivia looked away. Not good at all. The video continued. Olivia walked across the lot. She approached Daniel's property, then the footage froze. Years. The attorney paused the video intentionally. Smart move, very smart. The entire courtroom leaned forward. Everyone wanted to know what happened next. Even I found myself paying closer attention. Then Daniel's attorney asked a simple question, one question, a question that made Olivia visibly uncomfortable. Miss Sterling, pause. Years. Would you like to explain why you told investigators you were never there? Dead silence, nobody moved, nobody breathed, and for the first time all day, Olivia looked directly at me. Not confident, not arrogant, concerned, very concerned. But then something happened that shocked everyone. Instead of answering, she laughed. Years. Actually laughed, a loud, dismissive laugh. Then she looked toward Daniel, shook her head, and said something so arrogant, so unbelievable, that even the spectators gasped. The moment those words left her mouth, I knew this case was heading somewhere neither side expected, and believe me, what she said next would become the biggest mistake of her entire life. I have watched defendants make mistakes before. I've watched people lose cases because they talked too much. I've watched others lose because they stayed silent. But Olivia Sterling was about to do something far worse. She was about to underestimate the entire courtroom. Years. The laughter echoed through the room, not loud, not hysterical, just arrogant, the kind of laugh that tells everyone around you, I'm not worried. Years on the bench teach you that confidence can be dangerous, but false confidence? That's usually fatal. Daniel sat motionless. His attorney remained calm. The jury watched carefully. And Olivia smiled. Then she finally answered the question. Because it doesn't matter. Nobody moved. Interesting, very interesting. Her attorney immediately looked concerned. I understood why that answer wasn't legal. It wasn't strategic. It was emotional. And emotional answers create problems. Daniel's attorney slowly stepped forward. Miss Sterling, pause. What exactly doesn't matter? Olivia rolled her eyes, then answered, pause. That business. Pause. Him. And then she pointed directly toward Daniel Carter. The courtroom erupted into whispers. I immediately called for order, but the damage was done. Everyone had heard it. Interesting, very interesting. Daniel lowered his head, not angry, not shouting, just disappointed. That reaction bothered me because disappointment often reveals history, and history creates motive. I looked toward Daniel's attorney. He noticed it too. Then he asked a question that completely changed the direction of the case. A very simple question. Miss Sterling, pause. How long have you known Mr. Carter? The smile disappeared. Tiny movement, big meaning. Interesting, very interesting, because up until that moment, this looked like strangers fighting over damaged property. Now it appeared they knew each other, and Olivia didn't like where the conversation was going. She crossed her arms, looked away, then answered years. The courtroom became even quieter. Interesting, Daniel closed his eyes, just for a second. A very small reaction, but years on the bench teach you to notice those moments. People react differently when pain becomes personal, and this suddenly felt personal, very personal. The attorney continued. You know him personally? Olivia sighed dramatically, then answered unfortunately. Several jurors exchanged glances. Not good at all. Her attorney whispered something, probably warning her. Probably telling her to stop talking. Unfortunately, Olivia clearly believed she was the smartest person in the room. I've seen that before. It rarely ends well. Then Daniel's attorney walked toward the evidence table, picked up a folder, and said something that instantly caught my attention. Your Honor, pause. I believe context matters. Very interesting, because context often reveals motive, and motive changes everything. The attorney opened the folder. Inside were photographs, old photographs, family photographs. The moment they appeared on the screen, Olivia froze, not visibly, not dramatically, but enough. Enough for me to notice. Interesting, the first photo appeared, a charity event, Daniel Carter standing beside a much younger Olivia Sterling. The courtroom gasped. Suddenly, they weren't strangers, not even close. The second photograph appeared, a birthday party. Olivia again, Daniel again, interesting, very interesting. The third photograph appeared, and that's when the courtroom truly changed, because standing between them was another man, an older man, expensive suit, powerful presence, recognizable face. Even I recognized him immediately. Richard Sterling, Olivia's father, the millionaire CEO, the owner of one of the largest companies in the state. Dead silence, nobody moved, and suddenly everything made sense. This wasn't random, this wasn't accidental, this wasn't about damaged property, this was about something else entirely, something deeper, something older. I looked toward Olivia. For the first time since the hearing began, she looked nervous, actually nervous, interesting. Here's very interesting. Daniel's attorney allowed the silence to sit. A smart move, very smart. Then he asked, Miss Sterling, pause. Would you like to explain your relationship with Mr. Carter? Long silence, very long silence. The spectators leaned forward, the jury waited. Even I found myself watching carefully. Here's because whatever answer came next was going to matter a lot. Olivia looked toward Daniel, then toward the floor, then back at me, and finally said, he used to work for my father. Dead silence. Interesting, very interesting. The attorney nodded, then asked, for how long? Pause. 23 years. The courtroom erupted again. Years. 23 years, not months, not a year. 23 years, that wasn't employment, that was loyalty, history's trust. And suddenly the case felt completely different. Then Daniel's attorney said something that made my stomach drop, something I did not expect, something nobody expected. He looked directly at Olivia and asked, Here's Miss Sterling, pause. Would you like me to show the jury why your father fired him? And the moment those words left his mouth, Olivia's face turned completely white. Part 4, I have watched countless defendants panic in court. Some become angry, some become emotional, some become silent. But Olivia Sterling's reaction was different. Years. She looked terrified, and believe me, that terrified me because people who fear the truth often know exactly what's about to be revealed. The courtroom had gone completely silent. The jury noticed it, the spectators noticed it, even Olivia's attorney noticed it. Years on the bench teach you something important. Years. When a lawyer suddenly stops taking notes, something bad is coming. And Olivia's attorney had completely stopped writing. Daniel's attorney stood calmly beside the evidence screen. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't grandstanding. He knew he had everyone's attention. Then he looked directly at me. Your Honor. Pause. This is where the story actually begins. Interesting, very interesting, because until that moment, everyone thought we were discussing damaged property. Now it felt like we were opening a door that had been locked for years. The attorney displayed a company photograph, Richard Sterling, founder, CEO, powerful businessman. Years. Standing beside Daniel Carter, both smiling, the date appeared underneath. 20 years earlier, then another photograph appeared, company anniversary, Daniel again. Standing beside Richard, then another and another and another. Interesting, very interesting. Daniel wasn't just an employee. He was everywhere, company events, family events. Years. Award ceremonies, holiday parties, the pattern was obvious. Years on the bench teach you to recognize trust. And Richard Sterling clearly trusted Daniel Carter a lot. Then the attorney asked a question. Miss Sterling, pause. Would you describe Daniel Carter as a trusted employee? Long silence then. Interesting, no denial. Years. No argument, just yes. The attorney nodded, then displayed another document, an internal company award, Output of the Year, Daniel Carter. Interesting, then another. 20 years of service, Daniel Carter, then another leadership recognition award, Daniel Carter. The jury was watching closely now. Years. Because the picture being painted was impossible to ignore. Daniel wasn't a problem employee. He wasn't a disgruntled worker. He wasn't someone who had failed. He appeared to be exactly the opposite. Then the attorney asked the question everyone was thinking. If Mr. Carter was such a valuable employee, pause, why was he fired? Years. Dead silence. Nobody moved. Interesting, very interesting. Olivia looked away. The attorney continued. Would you like to answer? Long silence then. No. Interesting, very interesting, because innocent people usually answer. People protecting something usually don't. The attorney nodded, then walked toward the evidence table. Years. And picked up a folder, a thick folder, the kind that immediately gets everyone's attention. I remember feeling uneasy. Years on the bench teach you when a case is about to change direction. This felt like one of those moments. The attorney opened the folder, then displayed a document on the courtroom screen, termination notice. Years. Daniel Carter, employment terminated cause, violation of company policy. Interesting, very interesting. The attorney allowed everyone to read it, then asked, Miss Sterling, pause. Who signed this termination notice? Long silence then, my father. The attorney nodded, then asked, and who recommended the termination? Dead silence. Years. Olivia froze. Interesting, interesting. The attorney repeated the question slowly, carefully. Who recommended the termination? Long silence then. I did. The courtroom exploded. Gasps, whispers, shock. I immediately called for order, but the damage was done. Everyone had heard it. Years. Olivia herself had recommended firing a man who had worked for the company for 23 years. Interesting, very interesting. I looked toward Daniel. He didn't react. That bothered me because pain usually creates reaction. Unless you've already lived with it for a very long time. The attorney wasn't finished. Not even close. Years. Then he displayed another document, an internal complaint submitted by Olivia Sterling against Daniel Carter. Interesting. The attorney looked toward the jury, then toward me, then back toward Olivia and asked Miss Sterling. Pause. Did you personally accuse Daniel Carter of misconduct? Long silence then. Interesting. Years. Very interesting because now we had motive, now we had history, now we had conflict, but something still felt wrong, very wrong. The attorney opened another file and suddenly Olivia's attorney stood up fast, too fast. Objection. Very interesting because this was the first serious objection all day. I looked toward him. Years. On what grounds? He hesitated. Tiny pause, big meaning, then relevance. Interesting. Years on the bench teach you something dangerous. People often hide behind procedure when they fear substance. I looked toward Daniel's attorney. He calmly responded, Your Honor, pause. This document explains everything. Dead silence. Nobody moved. Years. I considered it carefully, then overruled the objection. The courtroom became completely still, and honestly, I will never forget Olivia's face at that moment because she knew what was coming. The attorney displayed the document, and the moment it appeared on the screen, Olivia's father, Richard Sterling, who had quietly entered the courtroom minutes earlier, stood up for the first time and looked directly at his daughter, not angry, not shocked, disappointed, and believe me, that expression changed everything, because suddenly I realized Richard Sterling wasn't here to protect Olivia. He was here because he had just discovered something himself, something terrible, something hidden, something that was about to destroy his daughter's entire story, and when the jury read the next line on that document, the courtroom erupted into chaos.